Hi everyone, welcome. My name is Taylor Wolford and I'm a Special Collections Librarian. I am really excited to be here today because we are going to be doing another SCRC unboxing. The topic of today's stream is processing mysteries from the archives, and Kathy is joining me here today. She can go ahead and introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Kathy Doran Black. I'm a university library specialist, and I oversee most of the archival processing in the department. I manage a lot of wonderful student employees who do a lot of processing for us, and we're going to be talking about what exactly processing means today.
And Kathy's being humble. She actually is a phenomenal processor and manages a lot of our technical services here in the Special Collections Research Center. So I will talk her up as much as possible throughout the duration of this. But yes, like Kathy said, we are going to be looking at what I think a lot of people don't have access to or understand what we do behind the scenes, which is process collections at the moment that they come to us. We get collections from donors fairly regularly, and they come to us in the order that the donor gives them. So what that means for our staff is that we are tasked with arranging, describing, and storing these collections to ensure future access for our researchers. So we're basically just pulling out unprocessed materials today directly from the donor in some cases to show you the steps we would take to make them accessible.
Yes, we're going to show kind of what it looks like right when we get things in, and they can come in all different ways and different media, and some of the things we do to them once they get here to make them stable preservationally and able to be found by researchers.
Yeah, so we're actually going to go ahead and get started with the first thing that we're going to show y'all today. So let me grab this from the corner. Here we go. So we have a very interesting collection of architectural records here at NC State. It's one of our collecting areas. And here's a box here from the T.C. Howard models, or T.C. Howard papers on synergetics. We have a couple models in this collection that are really fascinating. So this collection consists of architectural drawings and related documentation on Synergetics Inc., which is really well known for their architectural drawings showcasing dome engineering, like geodesic domes. So we got this collection fairly recently. And we can go ahead and pull it out. We had a lot of preservation concerns, I would say, with this collection because
it's unique.
It is unique, right? And very interesting collection. But we got these. Actually, how did we get these models specifically at first? Do you remember?
Gosh, I think that the donor just brought us these, not even in containers at all.
Yeah.
Just like carried them in out like they are, like just out in the open. So we needed to come up with a way to stabilize them and make them a little bit safer.
Yeah. So this is a case of sort of a difficult or tricky item for us with the boxes that we typically put items in for storage. And we were concerned, like you said, about things moving around. They are fragile, and to preserve them as long as possible, we actually created a custom storage solution. Our preservation department, shout out to them.
Yes, we're going to shout out to them quite a bit.
Yes, they custom created this box solution for us because the typical boxes we order would not have fit all of these in a way that we would be comfortable with them being in basically forever. So they created a top part of this box here where the geodesic model goes into, and then the bottom part will pull out completely from
kind of like a drawer.
Yeah, it's really cool. And then the smaller models that came together are in the bottom portion of this. So that's a really, really great way of making sure that we preserve our materials. But we are also lucky, I think, that we have a preservation department to rely on. Because I don't know about you, but I don't think I could make this.
No, not at all.
Yeah, no, not really our
not my
expertise.
Strength. Yeah.
So I think we're fortunate that we have someone who can create these sort of custom solutions for us. Because you don't want a box that's too small or too big for what you're storing.
Yeah,
right?
You don't want a lot of movement with the item inside. So that's what's great about these boxes. They're just the right size to keep things from shifting around.
And then the other thing that I believe it was it our preservation department who came up with the idea of putting the pictures on the boxes?
Yeah.
Yeah. They're really creative people, so again, kudos to them. But do you want to talk about the concept of the photographs on the side? Oh,
Yeah, some of I don't know if this one
this
has
one
it,
doesn't, but we have some, yeah.
we have architectural models. Some of our architectural models are pretty big and bulky. And our preservation department has put photographs on the side of the box. And this goes for some of our memorabilia too, because we do have some quite heavy things in some of our collections. And so the photographs being on the outside of the box really helps us to know how to handle the box better and how heavy something's going to be and things like that.
Yeah, so it's super easy to just go down, our shelves and see based on the photograph what exactly we're looking to pull. So thanks again, preservation. This box is so creative. Oh, I think I'm putting it in the wrong way. And really well done. So we're going to move on. Oh, there we go.
Oh, there's
for
the
the
photo.
audience. There is actually what Kathy was just describing. I'm on the wrong side of the box. There's a photograph right there in the corner that depicts the contents of the box for researchers and staff trying to access this box. So it's a really, really simple solution to a problem, but also we use it all the time. So it's really great for us. Okay. And the next thing we have to show is actually still from the T.C. Howard papers on synergetics. We have here a metal box that was original to the collection, right? This came directly from the donor in this arrangement in these containers. So that is sort of what the inside of this looks like. And Kathy, do you want to talk a little bit about just opening this box and looking at it, what are some of your immediate thoughts about how we would process this?
Yeah. So first, just for context, these are slides. So if you're of a certain age like me, and I actually majored in art history, we used slides all the time. You would take the slide and put it in a carousel and then project it onto a screen. So there's one there. These came in this metal container, and we don't like to keep things in metal containers. They rust, they get warped. It's just not a good environment for the slides. So my first thought is that we would definitely be rehousing this into a different acid-free box. By the way, all of our archival boxes are acid-free. They've been treated that way to best preserve our items. There's a couple of other things here that are mounted differently. So we might need to put these in some kind of an acid-free envelope. And again, these are from the T.C. Howard collection. I know a lot of these slides people probably can't see here, but a lot of them are more geodesic domes.
Yeah, the geodesic domes.
And he, by the way, worked very closely with Buckminster Fuller, which is another fun fact.
And then, so we get this is a great example of things that we get as is. And we are actually, some of our student employees are in the process of processing this collection right now.
Yep.
So we are fortunate in that we can provide y'all with a little before and after, if you will. So this is sort of the before. This is what we get. And one of our excellent graduate students has been processing this really fascinating collection, and she had decided with Kathy's consultation to organize these into one of our acid-free archival slide boxes. So this is sort of transporting these into an acid-free environment. And Haley is also really great, the student who's been processing this at putting dividers in between the different sort of different subjects or topics that she found throughout the slides that she was processing. Sometimes there are some ways that the donor or creator of a collection has organized things, and so as much as possible we want to maintain that.
We want to preserve that information.
We want to preserve that information as much as possible. So Haley had some context from working with this collection and these slides and created sort of like folder headings or little dividers within this slide box to keep track of what slides are where.
Yeah, our processors, they really kind of become experts on the collection as they go through processing. And so someone like Haley, who's processing this collection, might see a title that's been, or something that's been abbreviated, and she might know from her knowledge from previously in the collection what it stands for, what it means, and she can give it that proper context and title things appropriately so that people can locate what they need.
Yes, and another intervention that we do with our collections is, some of you may have noticed we're in a different filming location than we typically are. We are at the place where we store the bulk of our collections. It's an off-site facility, and it is temperature controlled and humidity controlled at a level that best supports the long-term preservation of the materials. And so for some of us, it might be a little chilly here.
Definitely today.
Yeah, definitely today. It's a little chilly here, but this is the best environment we can set up for these materials, in addition to having storage solutions that are also good for them. So.
Yes, yeah, that's one of the first things about when we acquire materials is giving them kind of a stable, climate-controlled environment. We have several different settings. They're all kind of different levels of climate control and humidity control too, and we monitor that.
Not to also bring up our preservation department again, but they do a great job. Jamie Bradway, preservation librarian, does a great job of making sure that our levels are correct here and at our other spaces for these materials. So he's been a really great help in making sure that we keep that maintained.
And it's very important to do that, to keep the odds of having any mold outbreaks or bug outbreaks from happening.
Alrighty, well, do you want to move on to the next item we have?
Sure.
Grab it.
We're getting the fun one next.
Yes, the fun one is next. Kathy and I are very excited about this one. Visually, it's really fun.
Yeah, so this is not something we get every day. Makes it a little bit, but it's giving everyone an example of kind of the variety of materials we get in the archives. So this is a board game. It's called Pooch, a new exciting game of dogs that try to outsmart the ever-watchful dog catcher. So this is from a collection called the Wayne Vicente Collection of Animal Protection Materials. It's a brand new collection that we've gotten in. Some of you may know that our animal rights and welfare collecting area is one of our strongest collecting areas, and really probably the best in the nation in that field. So this collection is, I don't know a ton about the person that it came from, but it's something that I think he was an animal control officer of just different animal-related, animal rights movement-related artifacts and correspondence that he collected. And so this game was part of those materials.
And I think we determined it's from the 50s, is that correct?
Yes, 1956.
Yeah, around 1956. So, we get these materials as is basically, directly from the donor. And so unfortunately we did not have the instructions for this game, but luckily it's a Hasbro game. So we were able to look this up and easily.
And thanks to Google, we found the instructions.
Thanks to the Google machine. I was able to look up the instructions because I'm very curious what the point of a children's game is that, has a dog catcher in it from the 50s. And so the rules of the game are that, sort of the concept of the game is that the dogs have wandered far from their homes and kennels and now try to get back without being caught by the dog catcher. And then the game includes a plastic base, 4 plastic dog tokens, a dog catcher, truck, and a spinner. And so it's really teaching children at an early age to participate in animal control in society, which has a long, long history prior to this game being created. But this is a really interesting artifact. And like Kathy said, it's fun for us because We do process a lot of paper documents and university archive records, which are a lot of paper documents. So to get like a fun board game in the mix is a really fun,
A little different.
little fun challenge for us. And it is fun. And it's also really historically interesting when you think about teaching children at a young age to catch dogs
Yes.
for animal control reasons.
Problematic.
Yeah.
Yes.
But this is a new collection also, unprocessed at this point, right?
Yep.
So we don't have a storage solution for this box at this point. That would be a decision we make when we start processing it. But what are your thoughts? I mean, typically, I feel like, yeah, what do you think we would do with this one? Because I'm a little on the fence about what I would do, I think.
Yeah, there's kind of a couple ways. Like we have some sort of long flat boxes. We just call them flat boxes, and it might be that it could fit in one of those. Might have to order a special one because it's a little bit of a more squarish shape than most of those are. The other option, again, is that if our preservation, they're going to appreciate all of our shout outs so much, they're going to, maybe they would be willing to make another nice custom box for this one.
Hint, hint.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think this gets to something that I really wanted to talk to you about because you have like such an extensive knowledge of processing, and I've gotten into heated debates with certain people about
I
this.
know. I've heard some of those
She's
debates.
heard them in the background, but
I try to stay out of those.
She does. She tries to stay out of it. But like, what's interesting to me is that processing collections is a lot of decision making, right? Like we are making decisions pretty much constantly about what we think is best for the collection based on professional practices, how we would do things to preserve it, how we would describe it, which of course also creates issues with decision making and bias in the archives. Archives are not neutral. And so I think that sometimes people have different approaches to processing, and I don't necessarily think one is wrong. But I think it's important to recognize that Kathy and I are talking about possible ways that we would handle these materials. But there is, in my opinion at least, no one right way to for example, find a storage solution for this box or to permanently store it for preservation. So
Yeah, there's usually not one correct answer for all your decisions that you make with processing. There's and some of it is priorities and how much time you want to devote to certain collections. So, we're going to, I think, talk about this more in a minute, but we don't necessarily give every single collection the same amount of description. There can be some prioritization there.
Yeah, but in the case of this box, we do know that we would want to preserve the structure of the original game box and the contents of the artifact as much as possible with whatever we decide to do. But everyone has different processing styles. Some might be a little bit more chaotic in the way that they organize collections. Some might be a little bit more meticulous.
We all have our different
we all
ways.
have our different approach, and none of them are wrong. It's how we approach working and handling with these materials. Okay, next we have another item from this collection.
Same collection from the Wayne Vicente.
Yeah, let me pull this out. There we go.
So this is a good example of this is really how it came from the donor. So it's their typical FedEx box, and
Here, I'll cover that.
here's thank you.
So this came directly. I mean, this is a FedEx box. This is directly from the donor, and our curators, Gwen and Todd, Gwen Thayer and Todd Kosmerick are usually the ones facilitating deeds of gift and acquisition of collections, and also setting up for them to transport these materials to us. So this is a very good example of just a fresh collection right out of the oven, ready for baking.
Yes.
I think
This is great. Somebody, the person who sent this did a little prep work and gave us some visuals. Thank you.
so. You can see this donor created sort of like a little inventory of everything that they were donating to us. And created like a image inventory, basically, which is very helpful.
Had sheet protectors,
Yeah.
which is great because we usually put protectors around our photographs, but it's very nice that they did it this way so that we can have, all these papers are obviously together in the same sort of document, and if they weren't sent that way, it might be hard to figure that out. But this includes, some notes from the University District Humane Society, some like membership or donation cards,
There's
reports.
We have
These date from the 1920s and 1930s.
Yeah, these are membership cards back from the University District Humane Society in LA. From the 20s and 30s. So they're really interesting and very well preserved also for the time period.
Yeah, they really are. That's a good point.
They're very well preserved as, coming to us. So how would you, what's your next steps for this as a processor, would you say?
Well, this is an interesting collection from the standpoint of what you mentioned a little while ago about decision making, because when you pull these out, sometimes it's tempting to sort of want to describe every piece of paper because all of them seem so interesting and like you want to. And when I say describe, I don't just mean physically putting into a folder, but also as part of that process, we have a content management system that we enter all of our folder titles into. But in cases like this, when you have a lot of different materials that are kind of all separate items, we would typically start by maybe getting the entire collection out and then seeing what kind of commonalities we have. This is sort of part of what we call arrangement, of looking at relationships between documents and, are there groups of documents that really are about the same thing or are correspondence from the same person, and that would help us decide how we're going to describe it. So, we wouldn't really want to normally do what we call item level processing, which would be describing each sheet. We would want to make some choices, make some groups, and then process the collection in that way.
Now, why would we not want to do item level description,
Oh,
Kathy?
good question, Taylor.
This is a little bit of a sore spot.
There's several reasons, one of which is that it would take considerably more time in which we would be spending, and at the same time potentially not describing at all other new collections that would come in, so no one would know that they were there. Another factor is money, the cost of our acid-free boxes and folders.
I have an example here. Yes, here. So we've been referring to acid-free storage this whole time. This is what looks to be just a manila folder, but it is actually created, it is actually created at a facility that we order from that creates it in an acid-free environment using acid-free materials. So one solution is we would put some of these materials in a folder, and we have stamps at the top, which indicate it's here at the Special Collections Research Center, and other information about the collection and the contents of the folder itself.
Yes.
So,
yes. And another thing about, another reason we don't usually do item level is normally, there's always exceptions, as we know, in processing, but normally you can describe pretty well a group of documents so that someone can find something that they're looking for without describing each individual sheet. So it's not just the cost and the time, but also, is it really going to add much to help people discover it?
And while we are talking about item level description and processing, I wanted to talk about staples and
staples, yes,
metal fastenings, paper clips, etc. Part of what Kathy and I are alluding to is this concept called MPLP in the profession, which is more product, less process. It's a method of processing things not at item level, as we've been saying, in order to process at a higher rate and provide more equitable access to collections. And one thing that Mark Green, the sort of originator of MPLP processing, argued is that we should not be removing staples and paper clips and any sort of fastening from every single item we get in, which is a huge change from in our profession.
Yes,
from
I
past
think
century.
Before that, the institutions were running enormous backlogs of materials that nobody knew existed, like they're not described at all, because if you're removing staples from thousands of documents, you're just not going to go very quickly.
Yes, and also like the rate at which. At one point in the 20th century, organizations were creating paper, had outpaced our ability to process. So that's really important. But one other thing you had brought up to me when we were discussing processing is the process of digitizing materials. If you want to talk a little bit about how we discuss that.
Yes, so this is a little bit related to what we were just talking about with the different levels of processing. Sometimes we get asked the question of like, oh, well, why don't you just digitize everything that you get in? It would be so time consuming. There's just no way to do it in any reasonable amount of time. So, and again, we don't need everything digitized. So really what we do is we, our curators, which really means, curate means select, they select the collections that are most appropriate and that our researchers would need the most, and we select those for digitization. Because digitization, as you can imagine, it's time consuming, it's labor intensive. People, students do have to remove staples and then scan each sheet. So that's just to touch on. And we have actually, we have a great website of our digitized collections, so everybody should check that out.
d.lib.ncsu.edu. Yes. So moving on, we are going to talk about the next item in our collection. This is, again, a fully unprocessed carton or container that we get. Let me even it out there. And so here's the big reveal. Ta-da! This is, I think, one of our best examples of what a processor gets, sort of from the beginning.
Yeah.
You pull out each box, and like the title of this stream, it is a mystery.
Yes.
And you gotta sort of, I think we're part detectives, part like personal organizers, because we do have to do a lot of detective work to arrange and organize and describe these collections. And we also have to be really organizational, which can be a challenge for some of us.
And it's fun. You never know what's going to, when you open one of these, you never know what's
You never know. And sometimes it is really funny. Sometimes it is really shocking what we find. It really runs the gamut. But this is a carton from Mary Yarborough. Elizabeth Yarborough was one of the first women to receive a graduate degree at NC State. She got her MS in chemistry in 1927. And so I think we're really fortunate in that we have her papers, and they're continuing to grow. And we have also some really interesting media types and types of materials that we get in, which was something we wanted to demonstrate as well with the collection. So as you can see in here, we have audio cassette tapes. We have a book, which is called Being and Doing. We have photographs.
Correspondence. It's really a good example of kind of the mix of things we'll get when a collection comes in. We have some rubber banded photos there. And then we just have a bunch of papers and envelopes and things like that.
One of the things that we like to what we like to do also is use tools, right?
Yes.
We have a lot of tools of the trade. So I'm about to pull out the photographs just to look through some of those. But we do have gloves. When we handle these materials, we typically use gloves.
Photographs, that is.
Sorry, photographs. Yes, you're correct. Photographs And that's just a way of preserving the integrity of the material itself.
We typically do not use the gloves for papers, just
Right.
because they have a tendency. Paper can sometimes cling to the cotton gloves, and then possibly tear. So we do not use the gloves on papers, but for photographs we do. Yeah.
And Kathy, what is my least favorite thing about processing?
Rubber bands.
Rubber bands. Rubber bands. She knows.
It's my least favorite too.
Yes. I understand why people use rubber bands. I mean, I feel like I also use rubber bands with my own personal organization at home. The only problem with rubber bands, and this is for a PSA for anyone who uses them regularly.
Please. Any group, yeah.
Let's get a group consensus. Rubber bands degrade horribly.
Yes.
I've opened up a
You
folder.
can see it right there.
Yeah, you can see it
on
right here. This
one.
this is a rubber band, and then this is the remnants of one kind of near the end of that plaque
They
there.
disintegrate, and really, they disintegrate pretty quickly.
They do, and I have a horror story, if you will,
Okay.
about this. So I'm not going to name names, but I was opening a folder once. It was an unprocessed folder that had a rubber band attached to it, and it had degraded in a way that it looked like an Alfredo noodle. And so I was like,
You didn't taste it, did you?
no, I didn't taste it, but I was really concerned because I was like, you never know. Like we said, it could be that this person who donated the collection to us was eating, and I don't think that's out of the scope of what we could maybe one day find.
No,
too.
no, I don't think so.
I thought it was an Alfredo noodle, and I started to peel it away from the folder, and I figured out just by the way that it broke that it was like a rubber band. But like I abhor these things so much.
Yes.
And that you're right, they degrade very
They
quickly.
kind of become like a glue type of
They do.
consistency.
And that's a preservation concern for us as well, because it might be a little tricky to see on this one, but like in this very corner right here is a remnant of a rubber band, and it is attached to this photograph. So that's something that we have to deal with as well when we're trying to process the collection. But we also have some other really cool media types in here. We have some audio cassette tapes. Would you say it's pretty common that we get like AV materials now? Do you think it's more or less than when you started? What do you think?
Oh, I don't know. It seems about the same to me. We still get, I mean, I wouldn't say it's super common, but we definitely get AV pretty frequently. And we get everything from, so, you can go back to different eras. We get everything from record LPs to VHS video cassettes, CD-ROMs, DVDs. We have film reels, lots of film reels, especially in our athletic collections. So we have a lot of different eras of AV materials.
Yeah, and those also come with their own unique set of storage and preservation solutions. I just know that the way that I would approach this is probably folder them. Depending on the condition, there might be a box that we could store, a good number of audio cassette tapes together. But was that your thought as well?
Yes.
Foldering?
Yes.
Okay.
Since there's only two here,
Right.
we would probably just folder that and put in a regular box. But we do have cassette boxes if we had, a good number of them.
Okay, and then there is another fun type of
We get a
material.
lot of these.
We get a lot of newspapers.
Newspaper
it is,
clippings and-
very, very prevalent in pretty much any archive I've worked at. Personally, like I frequently do come into contact with newspaper clippings. And studies have shown on analyzing the actual materials that make newspaper that it has a very high level of acidity in it, which is a concern for us because acid degrades paper quicker over time. And so we do have some ways that we manage processing newspaper with other materials. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, we generally just kind of try to keep a buffer between the newspaper clippings from touching other materials. So that would be normally like in this case, we'd probably just put some acid-free paper on either side of where the clippings are. It could be if we have a lot of clippings, we just put them all in their own box so that they're not kind of touching any other types of documents.
Yeah, and we, for the most part, will keep, I think this is another thing people sometimes may not know unless you've been processing a lot, is like we won't separate in a folder the newspapers from the rest of the materials because it's a newspaper, it's a different media type. I think that some might do that, some might separate just like all newspapers in a folder because they're common and they want to organize it together because of the type of material that it is, but we would not do that for the most part. We like to keep
lose context a little
right.
bit.
You would lose context that the original donor or creator of the collection had given it through organizing, arranging, and describing it in a certain way. And in the archives field, we call that the concept of original order, which is maintaining the original order as much as possible of a collection as we process.
Yes.
Not to say that we don't sometimes make decisions slightly
But
differently.
it's definitely a consideration.
Yes,
the original
it's a huge
order.
consideration.
It's something we consider, whether there is or sometimes there's not much
Yeah.
of an original order.
And that's another, this is the last example we have from the Mary Yarborough papers, really just tying into our concept of original order, is that like we got this folder in that carton as is, right? So we would typically have whoever's processing this just take the materials directly out of this folder, put it in one of our acid-free folders, and then this doesn't always happen, but there is in the top corner a title that the original creator of our donor of the collection put on the top tab. So we would typically, as much as possible, copy that folder title over to our own folder title, just because, again, this is how the person who made this folder and put these materials together arranged it to be described.
Totally.
So that's this is actually a case of like an easy thing, you know.
And we might take a quick quick look through to confirm dates. There might be a date on here already. If there's not a date, which is lucky. So the date on this one says 1986, 1987. We would just confirm that and then put that on the folder title as well. And then eventually the information in these folders and in these boxes that we process will be put online for researchers to review and see if they would like to request anything from the collection. Yep. And we would want to kind of make sure that we're not spending too much time on each folder. This is part of that MPLP concept that Taylor mentioned. Kind of take a quick pass through, get a quick feel for it, get a date, and move on.
All right. So
here we go.
Kathy loves this collection.
Okay, this is a University Archives collection. This is the Turtle Rescue Team records. The Turtle Rescue Team is a student organization in the College of Veterinary Medicine, and they, the public brings or informs them of injured turtles, and they bring the turtles to, or I'm not sure, maybe they go out and get them.
They do.
The organization goes and
they
gets
do.
them and rehabs the turtles. And then hopefully, if all goes well, they free them back out. So they send us their records, and we have really what you have here are like case files or medical files for each turtle.
Can I tell you, I pulled this one specifically because the turtle's name is Sauron.
Okay.
And for my LOT, Lord of the Rings fans out there, LOTR fans, they give these turtles the cutest names.
They do.
They give them such cute names.
They've got great names.
Yeah.
I believe there is a Taylor in this carton.
No, it's in the process.
Oh, it's in the process.
Yeah.
Okay. But they have themes. You can tell that they had themes for their names. Some days people were hungry. We're naming the turtles Twinkie and
McFlurry. Yeah, we got all the foods. So this is a box we have gotten directly from them, right?
Yes. And this is how we got it. It's pretty good because it's got this is kind of interesting. This is the physical exam.
Yeah,
of
it's a
the
physical.
turtle.
Here, let's I'll pull this over. There we go. And again, like, I don't know, we do get a range of materials in terms of like directly from the donor that's like organized to not organized, but theirs is very meticulously organized because these are basically case files. So it's got the turtle's name in the corner, you know, it's got the type of turtle it is. Sauron was a snapper, which makes sense in hindsight. Yeah. Usually I've looked in a lot of these folders, the original order of the folders themselves is pretty similar. So like it'll have the progress notes and then it'll go to animal intake form, physical exam, so on.
Very cool organization.
Yeah.
I have to say.
Shout out to Turtle Rescue Team for their really nice case file organization. Yes. It's done really well.
Yeah. But if can I show the carton again real quick?
Sure.
But so you'll see this is how it came, and you can see here that all these folders are kind of bent over, and the papers are getting, you know, kind of bent. So, you know, what we're going to do is take them out of this box and then put them into another box where they're not kind of getting bent and things like that.
The names are just too good. We got Beowulf in here.
Rob Gronkowski.
Rob Gronkowski.
Gronk.
Nice. So I think we have a little
Dean Koontz.
We have a little bit too much fun just processing this collection, and now we get to see all the names they come up with. But this collection has been this is an addition to an original collection. We already have a lot of these collections
so
processed.
This one is a great example because we actually have a before and after processing for this collection. So here's the same collection. Yes. This is kind of our standard archival box that we use quite a bit. And then this is how it looks on the inside. Folders are...
It's a little hard to see.
Yeah.
Here,
You're better at maneuvering these.
There we go. Put it on the ground there.
Yeah.
So you can see our fancy smancy acid-free archival box. We special order these, and then these are our own acid-free folders. This is actually like really neatly done too.
Yes,
like,
yes.
So satisfying for us to see.
And all of them, they're standing up nice and straight. They're not getting bent. They're not getting crinkled or anything.
Yeah, and then they just, like we said, copied, you know, some of the information about the collection at the top of the folder, and then the case numbers, the turtle's name, and any other information.
Who. That one's Who.
This one's just Who. I think they ran out, so they started doing Who, How, When.
Some classic rock bands? No. Okay, I thought it was like maybe The Who, but maybe
there's Taylor. Here we go. This is the reason. Well, actually, this is interesting. You pulled this box. And
I didn't even know there was a Taylor.
She didn't know that there was a Taylor in there, but there is. So.
It's a yellow-bellied slider.
Right. Okay, sure. It's a yellow-bellied slider.
I don't know what that means.
But that was funny. It's funny. I'm going to keep my eyes out for Kathy, too. You know, you never know. We'll come across it one day.
That's right.
But this is really a well-done, easy, in my opinion, easy processing
Pretty straightforward,
project.
yeah.
Pretty straightforward in terms of what we do. And then the last collection that we wanted to talk about today is actually the Hardwood Research Cooperative. So this is a cooperative that began its work in 1963 to conduct and coordinate research for sustainable hardwood forest management. And we have is this in addition to the collection, Kathy? Do you know? Or is this the original?
I can't remember.
Book. Okay, yes, this is the collection. So we really wanted, again, to show the variety of things that we get in special collections.
Yes.
And as you can see, this is different. This is different. This is filled with floppy disks, which we chatted about. I did not grow up with. I was not familiar with this before I started working.
I kind of grew up with it.
Kathy definitely did not grow up with it. But there's zip disks,
drives.
zip drives.
We've got different size floppies over here.
Yeah.
We've got some of the bigger ones.
Some of the larger ones. And then we have some discs, as in like CDs and DVDs in the back there. And you might be wondering to yourself, what do we do with this? You know?
What do we do with this?
Oh, it's a good question. Again, there's a lot of different ways I would process this. What would you do typically with a box like this?
Yeah. So besides panic, no, I'm just kidding. So these materials are what we refer to in the profession as born digital materials. Born digital means it was created in a digital format. So it can be anything it's sort of all your computing types of storage. So it can be anything from floppy disks up to today to like hard drives, thumb drives, electronic files. And we have Born Digital is kind of one of the sections of our processing. So what we would do, the way I would approach this carton is the first decision would be, do we want to run any of these disks through our Born Digital processing, which is sort of a separate workflow. We don't pick all of our disks to go through this process because it's a process that's going to describe that item pretty well, but it does take some time. So we don't want to send kind of like the item level processing or the digitization. We're not going to put every item we have through that.
Through Dave. Digital Assets of Enduring Value. It is a program created in-house to process our Born Digital, affectionately referred to as Dave.
Yes. We have great names for our tools.
Yes.
We have a Wanda, too.
Wanda? Yeah.
So yeah, the first step would be deciding what in here we want to put through our ingest process. And when it goes through that process, it gets a little better description. It also gets imaged. And you do more of this these days, so just correct me if I'm wrong.
We do logical copies or image copies depending on the content.
Safely stored. The digital files get safely stored so that our researchers can access them. Because one of the challenges here is that these disks, they're not going to last forever.
Right.
They're going to degrade over time. So if we want any of the files off of them, then we have to grab them off.
Yeah, and you and I were talking about this as like our Born Digital processing workflows as well, and we had this like silly moment where you were like, we do digital forensics processing, and I was like, yeah, we do, and then you looked at me and you were like, that's pretty cool.
It is.
She thought that was just so. I mean, I agree. That's something.
We have some pretty cool tools that we use to do the Born Digital processing.
Tools. We use tools that typically are used in a realm called digital forensics, which means they can really pool a lot of the metadata and content from our disks that maybe like a standard optical disc reader would not be able to. So we feel a little bit like detectives again, and that we got our forensics on for the day. But it is really fun working with Born Digital medium, I think.
Yeah, and they also have tools that will search for like personal identifiable information. So, there's certain numbers sometimes that people might have on computer media or in other places, really, that is sensitive. Like social security numbers, maybe credit card numbers, things like that. And we have one of the steps in our Born Digital workflow actually looks for numbers like that and sort of flags them so that we can determine if it's something that is sensitive and that needs to be restricted.
Yes, and then with our floppies, those are becoming a little obsolete for technology. Like, it is one thing I wanted to say about Born Digital is that the contents of what we get could be corrupt. It could be unreadable. That's the nature of technology in Born Digital, is that it degrades pretty much at the point of creation. So for floppies, we have a really cool tool that we use, a software and a tool called the CryoFlex, which I think like in IT and the technical realm, they love a good name. The CryoFlex.
It's a good name.
The CryoFlex is the name of this device, and it is able to. It's a digital forensics floppy disk reader that is able to read the disk content and preserve it when it comes to floppies. So the CryoFlex has a better rate of success than external USB drives when it comes to pulling content from damaged disks. So that is one good example, I think, of how our forensics tools can do a little bit more for preservation and storage than your typical Born Digital processes would. So we've got a lot of cool little tricks up our sleeves in the Born Digital realm.
We do.
Yeah. So physically, though, I think that's something important to say too, is like, there's two different considerations with Born Digital. There's the actual physical storage of the media object, and then there is the Born Digital storage of the
files.
contents,
Yeah,
right? The
the
files.
files on there.
So each requires storage, space,
Money.
resources, and all of these things, all of these considerations, which is interesting to consider the fact that the rate at which Born Digital objects are being created is much higher these days.
Yes.
Right?
And so,
We're getting
yes.
a lot more than ever before.
Yes, and the archives of the future are probably going to look a lot different.
Yeah.
Maybe there will be just a lot more computers.
It's just screens.
Just screens.
Just
for
screens
archives
all
of the
around you.
future.
So physically, though, we've talked a lot about the Born Digital processing of this. How would you physically store these?
Oh yeah, I'd probably move these into. I'd probably move the flop. We have certain boxes that are specifically for the different sizes of floppy disk, and I'd probably put those in their own sort of smaller box where they
Yes.
wouldn't jiggle around. But yeah, I'd take them out of here. This is a bit, kind of jumbled in there.
Yeah, it is. Oh, rubber bands.
And rubber bands.
We got some rubber bands
Gotta
here.
love them.
And then another interesting thing with discs is we get a fair amount of discs in Born Digital content that's like undescribed. There's no information on the disc itself that indicates what it is. So you never really know when you put it through Dave what you might be getting. But looking at these discs, all of them have titles. You probably can't see it in the audience today, but all of them do have titles on them, which is helpful for us because we at least know what we're accessing and how to describe it should this not be processed Born Digitally, immediately at least. And then there is actually a sheet of paper wrapped around this one. I don't know if that's related to the disc, but it could be, and that could be helpful for us.
Yeah.
So I think that's where a lot of the like investigative work comes with what we do. You can't find out what a disc really contains when it goes through Born Digital. Should it go through Born Digital, a lot of our digital forensics tools will give us that contextual information, which is really helpful for a processor.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, and I was just going to add, this might be a little out of scope of what we're talking about, but once we have those files pulled off of a disk, then we can give researchers access. And one of our new features is the virtual reading room is a way that we can share files like that through, and researchers don't even have to visit in person to see the files on those disks. They can access our virtual reading room.
Yes.
And see them.
Shelley Black, digital archivist here, has done
Shelley.
fantastic work creating a virtual reading room for access to these materials remotely. It's really like one of the few I've seen in the country in terms of like virtual reading
It's
rooms.
really awesome. We've already piloted it a few times with some researchers.
Yeah, and we have piloted it. It is fantastic, and I cannot like commend her enough for the work she's done in making a lot of our Born Digital more accessible to the researcher or the user. So thank you, Shelley. We really appreciate your work. So that is actually all we had today in terms of materials.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, time flies when you're having fun. And we wanted to thank you all for joining us today. And I want to thank Kathy. This was her first stream with Special Collections Research Center, and I think she did a really fantastic job.
Thank you. You're always fantastic.
I feel really blessed that she's here today because she's so incredibly knowledgeable about what we've talked about today. And she does a lot of this work, and she loves it. It's really
Pretty cool.
Yeah,
It's pretty cool.
She loves it so much, and I love that for you. So I just want to let you know that all the collections that we have today are in the process of being processed. But if you have any questions or would like to access anything we've talked about today, you can contact the Special Collections Research Center. And then please join us for our next unboxing, March 24th.
Oh, yeah, that's gonna be a good one.
I think it's March 24th. I think that's right. With Victor Betts, he's going to be talking about Asian American and Pacific Islander voices in the archives, which is going to be a really interesting talk. And I think there's going to be 24th. Okay, I just got a signal. It's the 24th. Cool. Thank you.
Thanks for the cue card.
Thanks for the cue card. And we're really excited about that one. It's going to be interesting. There's going to be some of our models that are going to be shown. We have really cool architectural models that Victor's going to show in this stream. So please stay tuned for that. And thank you so much for joining.